All righty. Good morning, everyone. Welcome, welcome, welcome. We are so excited to to start off our day two of the Access Summit. And today, this morning, we're going to be talking about our Access research. So we have members of the research team, as well as we're going to also share some of the assets that we discovered during our research. And then finally, you're going to have the opportunity to participate in an asset mapping activity. And so we want to continue to build upon all of the assets related to STEM enrichment for K through 12 and undergraduate students here in our region and beyond. So we're really excited about this opportunity to expand upon the work that we've already been doing. And so first of all, just a little bit of housekeeping. We want to thank our sponsors. We are so grateful to have sponsoring us this year, Texas State University's organization, Workforce and Leadership Studies Department. It used to be the Occupational Education Program when I graduated from it, but now it's the OWLS program. We want to thank you so much for your support. Also, we have the biology department that's sponsoring us as well. Thank you so much for all of your support. And finally, we have the Rural Capital Area Workforce Solutions, and we're thankful for all of the support that Dr. Kara Ryan has provided us as being a part of our board, as well as being an advocate for workforce development in Black and Brown communities. So thank you. And thank you to all of you as well who have participated in the summit either this year or prior years. This is our third annual summit. So we're excited to continue this work and also to continue to expand upon it. So based on that, let's go ahead and get started. So let's pull up our main slides here. There we have myself today, as well as two special people who are helping to present the research on this morning. And also, I saw that we have other guests here as well and members of our family. So thank you so much for being here today. So again, we have this morning our panel of the Access research team, including myself. We also have Dr. Christy Daniel from the biology department at Texas State and Dr. Dana Garcia from the biology department. We also have Rocio Pedroso, and Rocio has served as our external evaluator over the past few years as well. So we're excited to have you here today. So for our Access project, for those of you who participated on yesterday, you will understand and know that ACCESS stands for Association of Collaborative Communities, Equipping Youth for STEM Success. And ACCESS, the project, the research project, as a part of that project, our goal was to create and develop an access network or an alliance of faith-based and community organizations. And then as a part of that, we also developed an access model. And so we had three primary goals that were a part of our strategic plan. Number one, we wanted to create the infrastructure for the access network, as well as we needed to design and develop the access model to utilize university and community assets, and then also promote and disseminate the network and the model nationally. We have a big vision for disseminating this model. But we're starting here within what we call just modeling after some of our partners and colleagues here in the region, the greater San Marcos area, as well as Central Texas. And so we want to continue to build upon this work and expand it and disseminate it within our local region first. So as a part of our research efforts to develop this access model, and We're going to talk more about the model at 12:30. So that's a little teaser for you to come back and participate in that session. But for this session, our main goals are number one, we want to talk about the research at a high level. We won't get into all the nuts and bolts of that. We do have some publications that we will share with you after the summit, so that if you would like to learn more about our work at a deeper level, you can read some of the publications that we have. But we also wanted today to focus on the assets. What are, and when we say assets, we're talking about those resources. We're talking about organizations, people, places, in particular in the context of STEM enrichment activities for youth. And so our initial study, we focused on number one, what university and community assets currently exist to equip African American, Hispanic, and other underserved youth for undergraduate STEM education. So we wanted to know within our local community, what summer camps, what after school programs, what also social supports are available that can help to equip and provide more enrichment for Black and Brown youth and students. Number two, we also wanted to know what skills are needed to succeed in undergraduate STEM education. And then finally, what factors influence their persistence in STEM education. So we looked at upper division students. We looked at as well lower division students as well. However, we recognize that if you looked at the trajectories and the experiences of upper division students, you can learn about their retrospective experiences, which can help us to understand what were the success factors, what were their experiences that actually helped them to select their major and decide that they wanted to even major in STEM, as well as while they were within their STEM program, what helped them to remain or to sustain their involvement, their pursuit of a STEM major. So let's talk first about the faith-based community and university assets. Now, when we first started this, initially, we had segmented faith-based assets over here, then community assets over here, and then university assets. And we got some feedback from our partners, and they said, you know, I don't even though I'm a faith-based organization, I don't necessarily want to be segmented and within a separate group or labeled as faith-based alone. You know, I would recommend that you combine them as assets. And so, so that's why we adopted this approach. So let's talk about some of the assets that our community partners shared with us. Number one, within the local community of San Marcos, Texas, they talked about the Hays County Youth Initiative and their STEM-based programming. That was one of the assets that was provided as a resource. The Discovery Center and their summer camps, also communities and schools of South Central Texas. Now, mind you, this is not an exhaustive list, but these are some of the assets that we have here locally. Southside Community Center, the San Marcos Chamber of Commerce, they provide a legit summer internship program. And then also through that, there's summer camps. Alternative Life Moving Strategy, ALMS, which was one of our partners throughout this project as well. And so they provide summer trips for the youth that they serve, as well as after school summer programs. Sozo Church provides summer programming, after school programs, sports in the park. We also have Vacation Bible School, was just captured in general. And that is an asset that we have seen and also utilized to disseminate STEM. And we're going to talk more about that during our session at 12:30. We will talk more about how one of our partners, and actually two partners, but one will share about how they integrated STEM into their VBS. Additionally, we have the Saturday Young Enrichment Program. So Wesley Chapel AME Church was highlighted as an asset, and their YPD Youth Development Program as well. We had First Baptist Church NBC and their tutorials and their scholarship program. And then their youth ministry is SCREAM, Students Caring, Reaching, Empowering, and Motivating. We also have the Boys and Girls Club of South Central Texas, and they provide services such as through the Mitchell Center. And in particular, I recall our partners talking about how the Mitchell Center actually was a place that students used to participate in summer camps, summer programming. And so I'm blending research here because I'm also a part of another research project within the Dunbar community here in San Marcos. And I know that community members desire for that center to still be utilized today for programming. And it would be a great opportunity to offer STEM summer programming within that facility as well. And then also we have the Greater San Marcos Partnership is an asset. Now, Greater San Marcos Partnership may not be a service provider, but when we talk about assets within the ACCESS network, we consider our advocates as assets as well. And so Greater San Marcos Partnership, they are responsible for economic development in Greater San Marcos. And the work that we do is connected to economic development, workforce development, community development as well. And in particular, we're utilizing an asset-based community development approach, ABCD, as well. And there's also CCD, for those of you in the faith community, the Christian community development approach as well, that has been developed through the Christian Community Development Association, CCDA. And so if you have interest in that, we have ABCD from a research perspective, and then also CCD is also another framework that you can utilize to help you in your asset mapping as a faith-based organization. Additionally, San Marcos CISD was highlighted. And so all of the programming that they have, so formal programming, but also schools provide informal programming as well. And so we recognize that although our focus is on informal or out of school time learning to actually support and complement what school districts already do, we recognize that schools as well are assets and resources that can help facilitate out of school time learning as well. So we have the San Marcos High School. We also have San Marcos Elementary School. I'm being mindful of my time here. And the list goes on. So I won't, as I go through the rest of them, I'm just going to highlight the organizations. And you can peruse or look at the actual assets that they're providing. So San Marcos Public Library. And I just found out that the San Marcos Public Library here actually has a workforce development specialist on staff. And so I was really excited to meet with her recently. CASA of Central Texas. We have the United Way of Hays County. We have El Centro as well. They served as one of our partners. And they'll be actually a part of the session at 12:30, sharing about a program that they participated with our ACCESS model as well. And so as you can see, there are a number of resources. And in particular, Centro has facilitated coding classes. Also the NASA Pharma program is a part of that as well. Families Learning Together, which is one of our partners, and that program will be highlighted at 12:30. And as well as Sozo Church's VBS will be highlighted at 12:30 as well. Okay, and then also within the community context, they also talked about some of the skills that are needed to be successful in STEM education. And so Dr. Daniel will share later about the actual persistence factors that we found in our study through a survey of STEM majors at a Hispanic serving institution. But for this particular slide, I really just wanted to highlight how when we talk about STEM skills, that STEM faculty or researchers are not the only ones that can inform what it takes to be successful in STEM. You know, we also look for feedback from our community partners. And so as you're looking to do this work, because I recognize that we have a broad audience here. Some of you who are probably tuning in are not from San Marcos, Texas, or you don't live in San Marcos or Hayes or Caldwell County. However, if you want to do this work within your community, you can leverage this information, as well as we would be more than happy to assist you in conducting an asset map within your community. And if you stay on for the activity, you'll have a chance to participate in an activity during our session today. And then finally, the community members gave us their perceptions about university assets that a university can provide, such as, and in particular, they highlighted Texas State here, how the University College and the HSI STEM Impact Program was an asset. And that HSI STEM Impact actually served as a partner with us during this project, because we wanted them to help inform, even though we were within the community and we were looking at a K-12 context, we wanted to know from someone who manages a program for students already in the STEM major, what do you see as the success factors for Black and Brown students who are actually preparing for and being equipped to enter into a STEM major? And so they provide mentoring, coaching, and tutoring, which is important. And as a former computer science major, I recognize that as being important as well. Also, we have the Rural Talent Search. We have our Recreation Administration program in College of Science and Education. And Dr. Daniel and Dr. Garcia are both from there. And then also, I mentioned the NASA FAMA program. That's actually a program that's run through the LBJ Institute for STEM Education and Research at Texas State. And then this is a continuation of some of the assets as well. Another one of our partners is Dr. Sean Justice, and he's from the School of Art and Design at Texas State. And so he has developed the Families Learning Together model where they're going into the community, they're at the library, and they are facilitating coding with early childhood age youth and their families. And it's a great program, and they had the opportunity to facilitate that at Central as well. And then finally, we asked them about the national and state assets. And so we asked our participants to look beyond their local community and provide to us other assets that we could utilize across the state or even on a national level. And so these are some of the assets that were provided. So the McKenna Center, IBM has a P-TECH high school program, also Girls Inc. and Dripping Springs, Girls Start. And so there's a plethora of programs that we have access to across our region, across our states, and then nationally, and you expand that as well, we have even more access. And so next, we're going to talk about what were some of the STEM success skills and learning experiences that our community partners provided as well? And I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Dr. Garcia, to present on that.
I have a question, which is how am I going to be able to advance slides?
I will do it for you.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay.
All right. So like Dr. Ashford said, I'm going to try to be mindful of time. And so what we're looking at here is the community, the skills that are required to be successful in STEM education that we mapped here based on the outcome of focus groups with our community members. And so, so you can see that I think there are some of them not very surprising. So for example, the ability to retain information is an important skill to be successful in STEM. Writing skills is also very important. And I think that I think sometimes people don't recognize that, but once you're in STEM, you realize how very important writing skills are. And then some of the other ones I think are maybe a little more surprising, like musical skills, which have or can have, I should say, a very strong correlation with math skills, which I think, at least in my mind, makes that link up makes sense. And so, and then other things that, other sort of acquisitions along the way can be volunteer work and life skills, as well as learning the vocabulary of the field of STEM that one goes into. And I know that in my experience, students are often taken really off guard by the amount of new language they have to acquire to gain mastery in the field. So can we go to the next slide, Shite?
Sure.
All right. And so, so the factors that influence persistence in STEM education are also manifold. And so, so if we start with the I can't point, but the factors that influence, oh yeah, the central dot there, you can see that a big player in factors that influence persistence are family factors or family related factors. And these include things like engaging with the family. And that is actually an asset to have family support, but it can also be a bit of a liability if there's a lot of need to provide direct support to the family, either in time or money. Educational attainment of parents is a predictor of success in STEM. And the need to help their families is kind of what I was really referring to a second ago when I was thinking about how much time students have to spend away from their studies in support of the family. English as a second language is actually an asset, but it can also be a liability because as I was just mentioning about acquiring the vocabulary of the discipline, if you're also learning English or you don't have facility in English, that it just makes it an extra burden, I think. Financial need is often highly correlated with minority communities. And then experiencing stereotype, I'm drawing a blank on the term, stereotype something, there's a word. Threat. Thank you, ma'am. Stereotype threat, as well as real biases, and often from people from whom you wouldn't expect it. That seems to be a persistent factor in students, in influencing students' persistence in STEM majors.
Yes.
All right. So I turn it back to Shite, who's going to direct you in an activity.
Awesome. So now it's your turn. It's time for you to now apply what you've learned about and begin to develop your asset map. And so we pose these same 3 questions to you. And for this activity, we want some participation. So we're going to have to see who is online with us and who wants to participate in this part of this session. And so we have built in time for you to actually build out a map. And so for us to work together on building this out, I've generalized it to where this could apply to any community. And so we want to make sure that we have captured the assets that relate to Black and Brown communities. And so the theme of this conference is focused on bringing together faith-based community organizations and our advocates and our action researchers to help to facilitate as well as to elicit feedback. This is a great opportunity to elicit feedback from you about what are these assets. And so what will probably work best here is through our chats. And so we're currently on Zoom. We're also live on Facebook. And so I'm not sure if there's anyone tuned in on Facebook. Do we have anyone tuned in on Facebook?
We have had some people in and out, so we'll see if someone starts commenting.
Okay. All right. No worries about that. Okay. Well, let's do this.
We have had some people in and out, so we'll see if someone starts commenting.
Okay. I see we have 2. All right. No worries about. We have 2 on. So I'm just going to start off an open discussion here. And so we captured some of the STEM assets here locally, but what are some STEM assets in general across Central Texas and beyond? And so at this time, if you would respond in the chat, you also have the ability for those of you here within Zoom, you can also respond using your, did we give them, okay, we can give them the ability to talk. So I'm giving everyone the ability to talk. So feel free to share in this discussion and let's build an asset map together.
What about all the manufacturing businesses?
Okay.
We have CFAN, we have BF Goodrich, I think it's still called, not sure. And then there's whatever else they're building. There's so many manufacturing companies that are coming in now.
Okay. What I'm going to do here is exit out of that, and I'm going to end the show. Discard. I do better typing. Okay, so let's enter my box here. Insert. Okay. All right, we're ready to go. So you said manufacturing companies.
Yeah. There's the pipeline business, all of that.
Okay.
I know that they train Gary Job Corps students, so Gary might be another asset.
Awesome. Okay, that was not on our map. Okay. Okay, what else?
We've had a comment about Catholic churches.
Yes.
Someone mentioned that the Catholic church schools have some great programming.
Okay. Okay, awesome.
There was another comment in the chat about the city and county libraries. And the Meadow Center.
Awesome. And so I recognize that these are local here, and that's totally fine. And so if anyone has input that's outside of San Marcos, feel free to add that as well. So what additional assets do we have? And so, okay, I see a raised hand. Yes, Julie.
Oh, that was from a while back.
Oh, sorry about that. I missed it.
Okay.
Green spaces. Awesome. Okay. Now they're coming in so fast, I can barely keep up. Okay.
So what if we included maybe some of the automobile sales folks, because all the automobile are computerized now? I don't know if
Okay.
raised one.
Ladybird.
They have a great park in New Braunfels. Oh, I can't remember the name of it, but you can do like outdoor activities. You can fish and canoe and do things like that, which might be an introduction to learning about, you know, biology. I don't know if they have any specific classes, but they do, probably.
And you have Meadow Center on there twice.
Okay. I'll type in Fisher Park here.
That's it, Fisher.
I may need to make my boxes a little smaller.
And Landa Park is awesome.
Now, where are these two places? Are they in Braunfels?
They're on the east side, I guess, southeast side of New Braunfels.
Okay. So those places that are outside of San Marcos, I will try to label those.
Yes, and Fisher Park is fantastic. They have a butterfly garden and things like that.
We're also blending different types of STEM. And so we're looking at STEM as a multidisciplinary. And so this is good as well, because some people may think only about the technology part or programming. And so I'm grateful for Christy or Dr. Daniel and the work that you're doing in outdoor education. And
You know, there's all
inform that. And citizen science and those types of things. So
right. There's also your state parks and your regional parks, all of those big area parks, Texas Parks and Wildlife.
okay.
They have all kinds of programs.
And there are a number of initiatives. So we're, also talking about in the context of Black and Brown communities. And so although these resources may not be inside of a Black and Brown community, and historically, some of these resources may not have had representation of Black and Brown youth, but the goal is for us to engage these students more in these contexts. And I know in particular for outdoor education and across the board, because we're talking about STEM equity and closing that gap, that there are initiatives to include more Black and Brown students. And so this is great for us to look at this holistically, but then also we have the challenge of taking this information and finding ways that we can begin to engage more students of color within these contexts as well.
Shatay?
Add Lady Bird Johnson twice. Okay, thank you.
Shatay,
Yes.
I was also gonna I was also thinking about, as we're developing these asset maps, and we have, some number of junior faculty in College of Science and Engineering and outside of the college, including yourself, who are busily trying to construct career proposals, National Science Foundation career proposals, which have a strong educational component. And so we could be an asset to them, and they could be an asset to us as well, because they need this piece.
Yes.
I'll volunteer.
Yeah.
I'll be part of their piece.
And no, this is great. And so at the end, we'll talk about how we plan to help communicate this more broadly, but that adds to that plan, right? In terms of how can we also share this within our university community as a resource.
Right. Christy, is the ISEF to which you're referring, like the high school, middle school, International Science Fair competition? Okay, very good. Thank you.
It's not hosted at Texas State or in San Marcos right now, but a lot of students could work with faculty or teachers or anybody to get involved in that, no matter where they are. And a lot of times they're going to have regional or local competitions to get to the state level or national level, international level, which is often held in San Diego.
Are you involved in that directly?
I used to be, and I know a lot of the directors.
Yeah, I think Carolyn
yeah.
Pesty is involved in it.
Yeah, I used to be, because it used to be held when I was at University of Southern Mississippi. It was actually the state competition was held at our university. Now I believe it's held at A&M. I think it's at A&M. I don't think it's at UT. I'm not too sure which one. I know the Science Olympiad is held at A&M, and I think they're looking at getting rid of it. I don't think A&M wants it because it's a really good recruitment tool, and A&M is at a cap, and they're like, we don't care. They don't really need it for recruitment, but it's so much work. That used to also be held at my other school. The Science Olympiad is a lot of fun though, but it's not in our area, so I didn't put that on there, but it could be an asset as well because students could get involved and then go. So yeah, the science, I'll write that down since I'm talking about it.
Okay.
Olympiad, because that's something that schools in the area could get involved and have teams to kind of compete and do hands-on active, like they're fun competitions. Some of them are just tests. Some of them you have to build like a vehicle and have it perform different tasks. Sometimes it's like they build a rocket so it's yeah, and they can get scholarships for it for college.
That's awesome.
And I know a lot of the state directors, not the one in Texas, like I said, I think she's looking at retiring soon and trying to find someone to take over, but it's at a different school. But I know a lot of the other state directors. I know Utah, Iowa, Nebraska, Mississippi. I know probably about half a dozen.
Well, this is why we have connections or relationships with researchers, advocates, because we can then be able to pull together these resources, because I was not aware of all of that. And then also the breadth of that across the state, across the nation, in terms of your connections there. So we're very fortunate to know you, Dr. Daniel, and then Dr. Garcia as well. You bring a lot of assets to the network, and so this is what it's all about. So this is exciting, and so I want to get caught up here with the assets that are coming in, and as we're building our asset map, and so let's take another 15 minutes to finish building this out. And so our goal is to share this. We actually have an asset map, a directory on our website, but it's not published yet because we're working on the organization of that data. But we've entered in the assets that we have that we shared with you today. They're entered into an actual map. And so we want to continue, as I said, to build upon this map. And it's a work in progress. We never will get to the point to where we would say the map is done. We can't add anything more because there's new programs and new resources being added all the time. And so as you learn about new programs, and in particular summer camps, after school programs, we want to make sure that they're captured on the map, or even other resources such as museums and parks and things. And so the goal is with this is to ensure that we provide these resources to our network providers who are working closely with youth in communities. And so that as they're putting together their learning plans, that they can put together a pretty engaging, interactive plan to engage youth in a fun and exciting environment in STEM. Because one of the factors that we don't see this in our research currently, but one of the factors of youth not being engaged in STEM is because they find it boring, or they just can't connect with the topic. And so we need to find ways to make STEM fun and engaging. And there's some great programs out there that already do that work. Okay, I see some more assets that I need to add to this map. Okay. So we have, awesome. So San Marcos Public Housing Authority, the CAD program, has actually focused on recruiting STEM volunteers. It has had an engineering and coding program. Oh, wow, I didn't know that. So let's make sure we capture that in the notes as well. That's great. And thank you to those who are capturing notes for us today. Okay, HHMI Discovery Center in San Marcos. Okay. Thank you, Christy. Thank you, Robert. I see your feedback. Thank you for joining us again today. He was one of our speakers on yesterday during our first session as we talked about diversifying the STEM workforce. And he's with the Texas Workforce Commission and just has a heart for this work. So we appreciate you being on board with us today. And so that we add associations that are related, STEM related, like Professional Engineers Association, Electricians Union. And so let's make sure that we add those as well. So we have professional. And so in particular, I know that we have the National Society of Black Engineers. We have the Society of Hispanic Professional Engineers. We have other groups similar to that. We have ACCEYSS, and I can't give you that name of that acronym on the spot, but it's basically my name. Oh, go for it. What does SACNAS stand for? I'll type that here.
I think, Rosie, are you going to speak up?
Okay. I was, but you can read it off.
Okay, it's the Society for Advancement of Chicanos and Native Americans in Science. And I noticed, Rocio, that on the note to me that you also put Hispanic, and I haven't been involved with SACNAS for a while, so have they added that into their name, their official name?
Yes, they have.
Okay.
Okay. Are there any other groups in STEM related organizations for Black and Brown that we don't have captured? So I'm adding SHIP.
You could use the Hayes County Extension Office or El
Okay.
Patemo, maybe.
Okay. Hayes County Extension Office. Okay. Can you type the rest of that? Okay. I see here. 4-H. Okay. Agricultural sciences. I agree. That is a STEM related discipline.
Mhm.
Well, right. And there's also so much funding from NEFA and so much, kind of initiative.
Mm-hmm.
But
And 4-H, I know that's more on the ag side, but I've heard and also read through the research that there's a lot of collaboration with faith-based organizations with the 4-H program. A lot of times that they're facilitated within different faith-based buildings.
also, I think Lauren put Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts. Did you put that on there? Because when you're,
I missed that one. Thank you.
yeah.
Thank you, Lauren.
Regarding any kind of ag stuff, what about just the local animal shelters? Because they do perform medical procedures and things like that. Don't know.
Okay.
I don't know.
We'll add it. We will add it. So animal shelters. Perhaps that could be a place to take youth on a field trip. Perhaps. And related to a concept in STEM. Okay.
Yeah.
Did you have one more?
Who, me?
Mm-hmm.
No, thank you. It was just a random thought.
Okay. Well, I see I've missed a few here. So let's finish out the ones that we have. We have the body. Okay, let me go back. Okay, Tina K's, Bob Platt.
I think you can skip the body farm because it's not technically open.
Oh, it's not. Okay.
And there's a more technical name for it. I think it's some forensic, blah, blah, blah.
Okay, manufacturing businesses. Okay, we have that. We have
The Griffles.
Griffles. Okay, local biomedical. Okay, Griffles.
So I put Griffles in there because it exists. I don't know that they have any programming, but I can imagine that they would be interested. Maybe,
What
I
is
don't know.
that, Dana?
It's a plasma company, I think. Anyway, but what they're involved in is like doing massive high throughput screening of blood products. I think that's their main gig. And it's just right north of town. I mean, it's in town, I think, but it's north of town, like right before you get to the Blanco River on I-35.
Huh.
Are you laughing at my pronunciation, Chate?
No, I'm not laughing at that. I'm laughing because Lydia is so gracious. She's telling me that I have professional engineers on here twice. Thank you.
Well, it's very important.
Gives you a free box.
That assists with education initiatives such as P2P, our Access Network, and I mentioned before that we're going through a rebranding because we have these two identities that need to merge together. And so I've been working with a brand strategist to talk about our mission and what we do and how do we blend these two brands. So stay tuned for brand change. Okay, so Access Network, P2P. We are an asset. That is correct. Also, Texas State University. And for those of you in other communities, I would add your university system. In particular, we highlight how through these university community partnerships, you have the opportunity to work with Hispanic serving institutions within your community or a minority serving institution. Perhaps within your local community, there's an HBCU. Not to say that historically or predominantly white institutions would not want to partner with community organizations or that there are not those types of initiatives available. We're not saying that. I'm not saying that. Basically, the research supports that within the minority serving institution, that you have scholars of color and scholars in general that have a special place in their heart for the local community context, and they want to realize opportunities to utilize their research to help drive change in local communities, because they can relate being a scholar of color because they have actually perhaps been a product of some of those communities as well. And so definitely working with your local university institution is a benefit and can be an asset within your community, especially when you have community engaged scholars such as ourselves who embody this work. Okay, also community colleges as well. Without saying, they provide excellent resources for the community as well. Okay, we have the Greater Austin STEM ecosystem. Yes, yes, yes. There's also the Alamo STEM ecosystem, and they're doing great work as well. And I've connected with both before, and so we want to continue to connect across here in Central Texas, across this high-tech corridor that we have here as well. The Greater Austin STEM ecosystem. And so similar to ourselves, they're connecting with groups of individuals and organizations and schools to facilitate systems work. Texas Girls Collaborative Project as well. So both of these, Greater Austin STEM ecosystem, and then also the Texas Girls Collaborative Project, both of these are being facilitated out of the University of Texas at Austin. And so these are great resources as well. Okay, so in last ones, we have Texas Hispanic STEM Research Alliance. I'm not familiar with that one, so that's a new one that we haven't connected with yet. So thank you for providing that. And REL Southwest. We'll worry about spelling later. All this pressure. The world is watching me type on a PowerPoint slide right now.
Better you than me.
Okay, and then finally, Latinos outdoors. Okay, we have put together our asset map. Congratulations. Yay, thank you for
Good job.
participating in this activity. Wow, these are resources that we had not considered. And so, as I mentioned, this asset map is an evolving map. It's a work in progress. So thank you so much for participating in this project as well as this activity. And so in the interest of time, we're going to move forward to persistence factors. And so we wanted to break up the research for you because we realize that research sometimes may not be the most interesting topic to learn about. And so, and to sit through an hour and a half of a lecture or a presentation about statistics and what we found may not be the best approach. So now we're going to have Dr. Daniel share about the research that we found related to persistence factors. And so I will be your guide and help facilitate the slides, but I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Daniel.
Do you want to share this as a, there you go. Yeah, so I tried to make this not so statistics heavy and just give you the kind of snapshot on the things that we found. And right here, I say that these are the preliminary results just because, well, we always kind of fine tune things before we actually publish them, but these aren't so preliminary. These are kind of our final survey results of everything that we have gathered over the course of our research project. So if you want to go to the next slide, what we were able to do is we were able to survey our students that were majoring in different STEM majors across the College of Science and Engineering at Texas State, and we were really looking at upper level students. So this is only including juniors, seniors, and a few recent graduates who at the time were, we could call them like super seniors, or they happen to have just graduated and were taking a few courses to meet some prerequisite needs before they moved on. So we would also classify them as like post baccalaureates where they hadn't quite left. And so we had a lot more students take this survey, but we didn't use their responses in this final analysis because we were really looking at persistence in the degree. So we didn't want to use freshmen that were just incoming students. And some of the students, well, they were typical students and didn't necessarily complete this entire survey. So we didn't use any type of data sets that had incomplete data. So that's why we were left with the 203 responses, but it is a large and robust enough sample size that we think that we have a good enough sample set that we can make some generalizable findings that we can apply this to not just our group, but we can kind of think about this in terms of patterns of what we could expect at other schools as well. So this is just kind of a breakdown of the people that we had respond to our survey. So if you can see, most of the people that responded were female, but we do have a high female enrollment at our university. And we did get a high number of minority students, and these were any Hispanic or Black students or students that had mixed race. We classified students that were of white or Asian descent as non-minority students because they were classified as such based off the National Science Foundation categories within STEM. And we also looked at the languages spoken, as Dana was saying. Sometimes we consider bilingual an asset, and sometimes it can be, what was the other word you used? Not such an asset?
Well, I
You
think I
said
was
the
just
word.
saying that there's always already so much language acquisition in science that
Right.
it just feels like an added burden.
Right. So the majority of our students were English speaking only, but we did have a fair number of students that were bilingual or trilingual. And then we also broke them down by grade level. And this was more of a filtering process because we only wanted juniors and seniors or recent graduates. So we wanted upper level students only to complete this. And then we broke our students down by major, and we were looking at biology students, which were most of our respondents were from the biological sciences. And this tends to be how it is with any survey that we give within the College of Science and Engineering. And we're not too sure why, just biology students are more likely to respond to surveys. For whatever reason that is. But we also had a fair number of chemistry majors, computer science majors, and engineering. And I call this engineering plus. I forgot to put the plus on there, but these engineering majors are engineering. It is, sorry, I have this classified later, but it is engineering, physics,
Technology?
and applied math.
Okay.
So it's any of the engineering majors that we have. I grouped them all together, but it's also including physics majors and applied math majors. We don't have a whole lot of physics majors or applied math majors, so they were all grouped together because there was no differences really in there, no significant differences amongst the responses, so they were able to be grouped together. So I just wanted to give you kind of quick breakdown of who we were having respond to our survey. If you want to go to the next slide. And these are the factors we explored. I'm not going to go over this one too much, but we did look at 17 different factors. So if you're interested, if you've been to our Over Summits before, you've seen these before, they haven't changed. But I do want to go over kind of the ones that were more important. So if you want to move on. So we wanted to look at two different things. We wanted to look at one, the reasons for applying, and we wanted to look at what were the significant dimensions for the reasons for applying, and also their reasons for what was influential for their reasons to persist within the major. So I'm going to first talk about the significant factors or dimensions for their reasons for applying. So if you want to move on, if they had a low number, that meant it made them not want to apply. And if they had a high number, it made them want to apply. So that's going to matter here in a moment. But the first thing we did is we broke them down by comparing majors. And so when we looked across major, Shite, there you go. When we compared it by major, there were actually 4 significant dimensions that emerged. And so with chemistry students, they were more significantly influenced because of family or peer pressure. So family and peer pressure made them more likely to select their major than any other major when it came. So biology students didn't report this. Computer science and engineering plus students weren't reporting this, or the chemistry students had a significantly higher influence because of family and peer pressure. With biology majors, they were significantly lower influence because of job opportunities. So computer science and engineering plus majors saw that there were more likelihood of jobs, and that's what was causing them to kind of seek out those majors than biology students. And also with engineering plus majors, they were significantly higher or more likely to be influenced based on the geographic location of their program compared to biology and computer science majors where it wasn't as big of an influential decision. And also with engineering plus majors, they report significantly higher influence due to personal motivation compared to chemistry and computer science majors. And there was no significant difference between engineering plus majors and biology students. So the way that we were able to do this, if you are interested in stats, is we ran an ANOVA with the LSD of means, but that's if you want to get into stats, we can have a chat about that at another time. And then when we compared them by race, we found that there were only 2 significant dimensions, and this is for their initial application, right, to enroll. There were 2 emerging influences, and in both cases, the minority students reported lower influences than the non-minority students, so the white or Asian students. And so geographic location and a participation in faith-based school were less influential than it was for minorities or majority students or non-minority students. So I thought it was interesting that white and Asian students, it was more influential to them to consider geographic location and also if they had been in a faith-based school or not. But with minority students, we didn't see any more higher influences. And then if you want to move on. And then there were two significant dimensions that emerged when we compared with gender. And so male students reported significantly lower influence due to stereotypes of gender in the fields, which we weren't surprised about. Females were more highly influenced because of gender stereotypes in the fields. That one we actually weren't surprised about because there's kind of the trending stereotypes. And then the male students also reported a significantly higher influence. So they were more influenced due to presence of job opportunities compared to female students. So the idea of whether there are jobs available or not, that wasn't as influential for female students, whether or not they chose to select their major in STEM. And then their reasons for remaining enrolled actually changed a little bit. Some of these factors stayed or persisted, but some of them changed a little. So if you want to continue, we also compared by major, and then we compared by race and gender in the same way. And so we found that there were only 3 significant dimensions when it came to persistence. There was the presence of job opportunities. In this case, it was still with biology. And so instead of biology being significantly lower compared to science, computer science and engineering, it was now only significantly lower compared to just computer science. So it changed slightly. There was no significant difference between the computer science or with chemistry. So that actually kind of equalized between the other ones, but there still was a significant difference there. And then with chemistry, there was a significantly higher influence due to their sense of belonging to biology and compared to biology and computer science majors. So this was a new dimension that popped up. So chemistry majors really persisted in their major because they felt that they belonged, or they felt that they belonged to this field of chemistry. So there was that sense of belonging factor where we weren't seeing that as much in the biology field and in the computer science field. And there was no significant difference within the engineering plus group. So we can't make any claims there. And then with the engineering plus majors, they still were having a significantly higher influence due to personal motivation. And instead of being compared to chemistry and computer science like it was in the initial enrollment, is now significantly different compared to biology and computer science. So there's a flip in the biology and chemistry. So there's kind of a slight change there. Now, when we compare things by race, with the minority, we actually now, instead of just having 2 significant differences like we did when they were enrolling, we are finding now there's a 3rd significant dimension. So we're still seeing geographic location, and we're still seeing participation in the faith-based college. So those 2 remain the same. But for the persistence, what is interesting is that the 3rd one that popped up is the potential for learning experiences in the program. But we're seeing that influence is still really only significant for the non-minority students, for the white and Asian students. And then for the last dimension that we were looking for, again, we had a 3rd dimension that popped up for the persistence. And we were still seeing the same 2 that were showing up before, with the stereotypes about gender in the field and the presence of job opportunities in the same format. But the 3rd dimension that emerged in terms of persistence was that males started reporting significantly higher influence due to self-confidence in the subjects compared to female students that didn't show up initially. So that is, and then what we also ran is, we also did, so that was the stats. So that's when we just ran the numbers, right? So we could do a statistical analysis. But what we also did is we looked at the open-ended or qualitative responses that students were giving us. And we looked to kind of ask them, well, why? Why were you influenced by these dimensions that you were talking to us about? And so I worked with an undergrad student to kind of just look at the frequency, because we were just looking at what students reporting as the reasons. And so I just reported these, and we're still, this is where the preliminary analysis is, because we're still going through this. So I just reported these kind of on a frequency basis. So if you're going to see the most commonly reported influence is at the top. And so I just have them in order. And so really the reasons why they were making these decisions and the reasons why these dimensions were so influential on the students is because the factors they selected were helping increase their personal motivation to really keep going in their program. So that's what they were saying. They picked the dimensions they did because it helped them keep going. And they thought that what they were doing was opening up job opportunities. Whether or not they were talking about presence of job opportunities, they thought that their actions and their degree was opening job opportunities. They also were interested in the degree content. And some of them actually didn't report any direct influence. So I'm not too sure what was going on with what they were doing because they said none, or they just didn't report anything. And a lot of them were saying that these were pre-professional prerequisites. So they kind of felt like they didn't have much change, like they kind of had to do it. So these are just some of the things they were talking about. And a few of them, not many, but a few of them were talking about how they felt a calling or they really wanted to help others. So that was kind of a more personal thing. So if you want to go on to the next slide. This one I thought was, we kind of threw in, we only were able to get this from half of our students because we gave about half of our respondents came before the COVID pandemic, and the other half of our respondents came after the COVID pandemic. But I did think it was interesting enough to go ahead and include the preliminary findings of what we have so far. We did ask them about the impacts of COVID-19 on their progress towards their degree and how that influenced their persistence. And I was actually reassured that for the majority of our respondents, that the impacts of COVID-19 really has not influenced their persistence within the program. So that was really promising, right? And for the second highest was it really reaffirmed their career choice. They really still wanted to go into STEM. Others were worried about online learning, or they thought it was going to be harder to learn. And some of them became more focused on school because of that. There was also some negative financial impacts. Others that increased their curiosity. Some had potential delays in their career plans. It was harder for them to make connections. They were hesitant to work during the pandemic. It increased their desire to obtain higher education. I think part of that, if we read into it, was because they were having harder times finding jobs, or they didn't want to work. So instead they figured they would stay in education. There were a few that almost withdrew from school. There were some lost opportunities. Others just said, you know, it disturbed their routines. One actually said it made it easier. And one questioned their potential. But I did think it was interesting to see the impacts of COVID-19. Like I said, we're still getting into the nitty-gritty of this one. So this one is very much preliminary. And then the last one I wanted to share with you is just the word cloud. It kind of is our version of asking the students about assets, but we ask them in a different way. We were thinking for the students thing of what they thought what they needed to be successful. And none of the students gave any real specific things like, there were a couple. One said the Q+ allies support system. But for the most part, for the students, in terms of their assets for needing to be successful, if the words are bigger, that meant that those were the more important things to be successful. So this is just a word cloud that we put together of the comments that students said that they would recommend to incoming STEM students, and things that they found were most important to persist within the program in a successful manner. And you'll see commitment, study skills, time management, support groups, and seeking help were some of the top things that they found.
Thank you so very much. This is a beautiful graphic. I smiled from ear to ear when I saw this.
I thought you would like the word cloud.
I love word clouds. So thank you. And it's a great visual for our audience as well. So thank you for.
That's why I wanted to end on that one.
So thank you so much. And we have about 4.5 minutes left for any burning questions. Of course, if you're going to continue on with the rest of the summit, feel free to ask questions in the next session at 12:30. But if you have any questions now about what we've presented, about the assets, or perhaps you're interested in us conducting an asset map activity within your local community or assisting you with doing so, please feel free to reach out to us. The best way to reach us is, before I go there, if you have a question, feel free to go ahead and type it in. So our process that we follow as we are expanding our ecosystem in Greater San Marcos and beyond. On the first half of this diagram, you see for steps 1, 2, and 3, we formed an inaugural access network ecosystem in San Marcos, Texas. We designed and developed an access model, and we're going to talk about the model at 12:30, so you got to come back to hear about that. And so utilizing these existing university assets and community assets. And then we conducted a pilot of the model 2 summers ago. And so as we look to expand and scale upon our work, we want to identify new faith-based and community partners. And we've already begun to do that. We have a partner, the Ag Science Camp, that primarily focuses on reaching out to Black students in the Houston area. They're one of our new partners. And so as we continue to expand upon that, and there's other partners here locally as well as in Austin. And so we want to identify new partners to expand this work. And then also, in addition to conducting the summer camp, our primary focus now is on summer camps. We will expand that to also conducting an asset map within that local community. And then also providing programming for not only the youth, but also their families, as well as we're able to assess those needs. And then refine our access model, because this is a work in progress. We will continue to build upon this work and then pilot it within a new context, because there may be some things that we need to consider for another local context. And so we want to continue. So again, the best way to reach us, I'm gonna move forward to our contact information. You can follow us on social media. We have our Access network pages. And so Access with a Y is where you can find us on Facebook, on Twitter. We just added a new group to LinkedIn because some of our speakers are on LinkedIn. And so follow us on LinkedIn as well. And then also, if you want to join our distribution list, you can go to our access.org website and sign up as well. If you registered for the summit, you're added to our MailChimp account. You can opt out at any time. And then also you can email or call us. So do we have any burning questions before we end? I'm looking for my chat.
I haven't seen any questions pop up there.
Okay. Do we have any questions on Facebook? Okay, I see your question. Thank you. Thank
There's
you.
a Q&A question.
It just says thank you.
And so before we close out, thank you again for joining. Again, want to recognize our sponsors. We want to thank the Organization, Workforce, and Leadership Studies Department at Texas State. That's the department I work in. Also, the Biology Department at Texas State, where Dr. Daniel and Dr. Garcia are employed. We also want to thank Rural Capital Area Workforce Solutions. Dr. Kara Ryan, she participates with our group and serves on our board. I want to thank you for all of your support. I would be remiss if I didn't also call out other names that we have here with us. I want to thank Algie Thompson. Algie Thompson has been a long-term supporter and staff member with Access Network. So thank you for being on today and all of your support. Thank you, Taylor, for being our note taker today, for taking notes during this session as well. Thank you, Rosillo, for being our external evaluator. Thank you, Jess, for helping us and supporting us with our Facebook pages and groups. Thank you, Julie, for participating. We look forward to hearing you in our next session as well. Robert, thank you as well. And Robert Andrade was a part of our first session on yesterday, and he's been a supporter, and I'm trying to convince him to join our board. And then also, am I missing anyone? I saw Lauren Lowry on, Pastor Lauren Lowry, and really excited about bringing her on board. She agreed to participate as our board member as well. And so I could go on, and I have to also thank Lydia. Lydia, thank you so much for serving as our program manager. I could not have pulled this off without you. So thank you so much. So that concludes our 10 o'clock session. We're going to take a brief break for lunch on your own or lunch in your home. And then we will convene back at 12:30. And so if you would like to register for the next event, the next webinar, you can do so by going to accesswithany.org, or you can go to our Facebook account, Facebook page, and register there as well. So thank you again, and we look forward to seeing you at 12:30.